Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 17th, 2025 meeting of the Town of Barnstable's Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. I am the chair, Christopher Lozon. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, any member of the public is welcome to record this meeting as long as they make themselves known to the chair. Is anyone present from the public and would like to do so? I see none. Meeting is recorded by the town and will be available after the fact as well. So we'll do the call to order. Jeremy, if you can take the roll.
Certainly. Chris King,
A present.
Chris Lauzon,
Here.
Tom Keene, Jim Sproul, Lillian Wu, and I am here.
Just a point of
Go ahead,
information,
Mark.
Chairman. Tom Keene was sworn in as a counselor today, so he will no longer be on CFAC.
Yes, I was going to mention that. We lost Hector Gunther and Tom Keene in the last week, so we want to thank them for serving on the committee and thank Tom for serving on town council now. I'm sure we'll be talking to him again. But we are down a couple of members, so if anyone knows someone, please bring them in.
And I think Jim was on mute when we went through the roll call, so
He was, yeah, Jeremy. I assume you saw that Jim is here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
yeah,
This
just
is
didn't
Frank Ward.
record
Did you
it.
call my name? I don't know that he saw me. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
All
We're all
right.
set. I don't see any members of the public here, so we'll go past public comment and on to approval of the minutes from our last meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. I think they were excellent as always. Thank you, Teresa. Can we get a roll call on the approval?
Certainly. Chris King,
Approved.
Chris Lauzon,
Yes.
Jim Sproul,
Yes.
Frank Ward,
Yes.
Lillian Wu, and I am Lillian's not here. I am
That is correct.
yes.
All right, they're approved. So on to our topics. We got a whole list of things to talk about tonight. We'll start with Chris King and Jim Sproul. They put together a new document for our budget, overview, popular annual financial report. So if you guys want to go over that with us.
Sure. We could, Mark, if you just want to pop it up, or I'll be happy to share the screen, whatever. It's just, we're not going to go into a lot of detail this evening. What I wanted to share with you is the work that Chris and I have done to using the town of Arlington's as a template for their popular annual financial report. We took their format and applied everything we could pull out of our FY26 financial or annual financial report. So that was our.
Can you see this okay, Jim? I just
Yep.
put it up for you. Okay.
So that's the basis for the content. And as reference, if you need to, as you review this, you can look at the Arlington template that we looked at. So formatting wise, this is way off, but I just wanted to make you, or not make you, but have you be aware of what our thoughts have been. Chris has done an excellent job of pulling his information that we just split tasks and wanted to show you where we are with respects to content to make sure we're on track with what the committee would like to see highlighted in a very overview report. So it's our hope that we'll be able to provide this online in an online community with people being able to read it either online or through a PDF. And hoping that they'll take advantage of a smaller report and they'll be prompted to other sections of the annual report as necessary. So I'm happy to open it up from there on to the floor if we want to review it. We're happy to. But I think at this point, this is where we are at in our efforts to try to create a popular annual financial report.
And Jim, if I can add, the format is really simple, where it's a 4-page format. But if you take an 8.5, 11 by 11 sheet of paper and fold it in half on the long side, and essentially you have 4 pages. A page one is what you're looking at here. Page two would be the bar graph, or there's page two is with the pie charts and chart below. Page three is the bar graphs, and then page four is that. And the whole idea is to have a very simple um, formatted pamphlet that can be sent out or available to the community, following the format that Arlington had, which was a very good format that Jim found.
Okay.
So we're open to any suggestions about these are the topics that, as we went through, felt that they were important, but it doesn't represent the whole committee. So if there's things that, as you look at it and want to get back to us, so we can do it tonight. But there's a busy schedule, but it's either or.
Yeah, well, I certainly appreciate your work on this. I think those probably are the three biggest topics that you highlighted there from a fiscal standpoint. Um, and I mean, I like the report. I think it'll be useful and helpful and make things more accessible for the general public. Is your thought to have this printed as well or just available online?
I was thinking of this is just me speaking out loud, of an online document, but um, there's no reason why it can't be comfortably printed and put in the libraries or town hall, whatever. But as we typically do with our other reports, so but I tend to think more digitally than print.
Okay. Any
And that,
comments from other
yeah,
members? Oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to make one other comment, Chris, is that the comparative charts where you look at the different towns that are surrounding Barnstable to have a comparative view of the different metrics, tax and standard home and growth rate. I just chose those towns as being the in proximity to Barnstable. I didn't go to the Down Cape. I just stayed on the Upper Cape and or the Lower Cape versus the Upper Cape. So I just stayed there. Anyway, you find out that the Lower Cape, Wellfleet, Truro, Provincetown tend to be at the higher end of this bar chart anyway. But I thought I'd just bring it out that the comparative towns can change also. If the committee feels that it'd be better to compare against another set of towns, like even going out to New Bedford or um, over into Plymouth in that area.
I'm fine with the towns you compared with. I think that makes sense, primarily the Mid Cape, and then the Upper Cape. It is definitely different when you get to the Outer Cape, so I think excluding those is okay. Um, I'm comfortable with that. I don't know what anyone else thinks, but
I
I
have a
think.
question. Chris,
yes, Betty.
it's Betty here talking. Um, when you did those average tax bills, does that is that include residential exemptions? Because we're one of the few on Cape. I mean, there's a few towns that have residential exemptions, others don't. Who's in that pot? Is that those with residential exemptions? Is it some sort of mixture? Because it's hard to compare a municipality that has a residential exemption with one that doesn't. I don't know how the numbers work. You haven't read your notes, so I'm not sure.
No, that's a good point. I did not make a distinction between towns that had the residential exemption or not. The way that I generated the numbers, I used ChatGPT or just AI, and I asked the question of give me the average tax bill for specific towns, and this is the number that it had generated for me. So I was handling or generating the numbers from a lazy man's standpoint.
Okay, I just wonder how that'll stand up, you know?
Yeah, and I don't I searched as best as I could trying to validate, and I wasn't able to really validate these numbers using hard data that the town has. I just allowed um, the data to be pulled through AI.
Okay. No, I think people always like to compare themselves to others to see
Mm.
where they stand, but I just want to make sure the numbers are actually comparable.
Mhm.
Well, as
Mark,
long
do you
as
have
we
a
identify
ready
this,
source for some kind of average tax bill for these towns?
Um, Chris, probably you got this data off of the state's database. The state keeps this information and they share this.
Correct.
And yeah, it does become problematic for communities who do have the residential exemption because you're not comparing apples to apples. And one of the other interesting phenomenons that happens in state of Massachusetts is that when you go to outlying communities off Cape, their average tax bills are pretty close to what their median tax bills are.
Mhm.
There's not much of a difference between the two because there's a lot of property. There's a lot of similar type properties in those communities. But when you get down to the Cape, you have the uniqueness of all of the uh, waterfront properties, which skew the average tax bill to be much higher than the median tax bill. So you can take your average tax bill for a Cape community, and there may be, in Barnstable's case, for example, out of 20,000, let's say 20,000 residential taxpayers, maybe 5,000 of them are above that average and 15,000 of them are below the average tax bill. That's why we often use the median tax bill when we're providing examples of tax bill impact on tax policy because of that vast difference between an average and a median tax bill. And that's information that's not available on the state's database. They don't provide median tax bills by communities. You would have to call around community by community and see if they would provide that information.
So
So
as a comparative, the question would be, does this give a good comparison or is this a comparison that would prove to be, uh, inaccurate just because it's an average? In other words, does it give the right perception uh, to the community?
is that a question? I think it sounds like a question to me. Does it?
Yeah,
Does
do
it?
you
Well,
think this chart is problematic, Mark, or do you think it adds value for the average tax bill?
it certainly will raise questions. And it would add value if we could find a way to do an apples to apples comparison, which would take a lot more legwork. We wouldn't be able to use the state's database necessarily to get all the information you would need to make a good apples to apples comparison. We'd have to pick your set of communities that you wanted to compare yourselves to, and then use those. The other thing that's unique about Barnstable are the fire districts.
right.
So there's a tax bill impact as a result of those fire districts, where other communities don't have fire districts. Their EMS and fire services are built right into their general fund,
Right. Correct.
part of their community budget.
Yeah, I didn't know if the fire districts were included in the state data, and just disregarded or closed my eyes to that and just pulled out the average that came from the state and then compared that to the average from all the other communities. So it might not be fair. And that would be a one question that I haven't answered myself is looking at my own tax bill, does the fire district component of the tax show up on my tax bill? And I don't know that.
I
I
will
haven't figured.
say, I will say that what I like about Mark, to your comment, is that that's really what we're efforting this project is to try to get more interest in the town's financial makeup, and a chart like that, even though it may be, I mean, we should identify the sources, and maybe it's doesn't encompass all or provide the granularity that we need, but it might stimulate conversation and bring people back to our annual report itself, and then from there engage in other conversations. So my comments are not meant to say we're not going to change it. We were happy to do it. It's just the intent of the document is to hopefully engage the residents in the financial matters of the town.
Yes, and I think I can work with Chris and Jim on fine tuning this. Um, I think it's probably be best to choose a population that they did here, stick to the Cape communities because of the uniqueness of Cape Cod,
Yep.
and then identify those that have separate fire district and what the fire district portion of that average tax bill is. And then also, I think every community on the Cape has now realized the usefulness of knowing what the median tax bill is as opposed to what the average tax bill is. So probably a phone call to each one of their respective assessing offices, and we can get the median and the average tax bill for each one of these communities. And then we can start building more meaningful comparisons, I think.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, that
Perfect.
sounds good. Councilor Clark, did you want to add
Thank you.
something?
No, I think Mark went down that path. I appreciate what you were trying to do. I think that was a really neat graphic right off the bat. I was like, well, that ain't so bad. And I like Betty's comment that, yes, we should wrap into the residential exemption considerations. But I would take Mark's recommendation on how best to convey the data to communicate with the residents. So thank you for that.
Great. Any other comments on the content from anyone?
I have a question if I could. Yeah, I have been on the road, so I haven't seen this document, and I'm only trying to look at it on my phone on the side, so I can't see the Barnstable number. On my phone, it comes up, the pie chart's on top of the graph, so I can see that the average tax bill is the statewide is 7730. What's the Barnstable number?
5441.
54.
Yes.
So the message that would go out is that the taxes are really, really low in Barnstable. Is that the consensus?
That's what the data shows, yes.
That to be statewide average, we'd have to increase taxes in Barnstable by 50%. It just seems like a message that's not what I would have in my head, that the Barnstable tax rates are that low. But maybe they are. I'm still learning.
I think the fire districts have a lot to do with that.
Then they would have to be
Well,
added. Right?
yeah, and the statewide taxes take into account, cities like Boston and Weston and Wellesley, and where the tax rate is quite a bit higher. The average tax bill is quite a bit higher. It has to also do with the average home price.
And
Interesting
well, let's
numbers.
also not forget the seasonal aspect. I mean, we're not a seasonal community, but we have a significant amount of seasonal homes. And as Mark Milne mentioned, we've got the waterfront. I mean, a few blocks from me, my goodness, they're paying 50,000-60,000 a year in taxes. So I know your audience is the residents, but we have a lot of summer residents, and I've had some of my summer residents, I don't represent them specifically, but they've come to me and they say they want to secede because of their taxes. So, we have to consider it. I mean, they won't secede, they can't, but they do pay the preponderance of our taxes that we live and breathe on. So there's kind of two audiences. I mean, the other direction, a half a mile, they're paying 3,000 a year. So there's a huge disparity when you get to some of these coastal areas. So there's a lot of nuances, and Mark is right. It gets to be extremely difficult
And the
in
residential
representing
exemption,
this.
to your point earlier, the residential exemption creates a larger difference between those taxpayers as well. So, but that's all based on the theory of ability to pay, which is why the legislature created the residential exemption.
And Frank is correct, is that what's the perception of this data going out to the audience, and who is the audience that's going to look at it? Some are going to look at this and say this is favorable, and some are going to look at it and say this makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that we can absolutely work on this data to refine it to um, uh, present information that uh, is perceived appropriately.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's great. Any other comments on any other parts of the document?
Just one. Uh, the first sentence says Barnstable is the oldest and largest community on Cape Cod, but Sandwich is the oldest community on Cape Cod. So we're second oldest, which is excellent.
Yes, I believe Sandwich was incorporated first, so.
Do they count?
Yeah.
One of the oldest.
Yeah, one
There
of the
you go.
oldest for sure.
All right, so you guys want to work on that
Yep.
and present it again at our next meeting, or how do you want to approach that?
I might not make next week's, but we'll be close. I mean,
Okay.
you can
Well,
always
I
put
was
it out
going to
for
talk
review.
later on about the meeting dates, possibly if we want to change those coming up on the holidays. So
And if
that's
anybody
fine. Whenever
looks
you
at it and
guys are
has any
ready.
additional comments, please just send them to Chris and I, and we'll work with them as best we can. So thank you.
Excellent. We appreciate your work.
Yeah, really, I thought the way you worded these explanations at the end, I think they make sense, and I think people will understand a complex topic more easily, and I think that's the point. So, nicely written.
Thank you.
Okay. So our next topic, our approach to reviewing proposed capital and operating budgets for fiscal 27. You want to get right into that, Mark?
Sure. So in the past, what we have done is establish subcommittees that reviewed the capital program and the operating budget, two separate committees. And I don't know if you want to take the same approach, or I'm just wondering if you wanted to take the same approach this year, seeing how you are down three members at the point. We do have a new member being appointed this Thursday evening, so we'll be back up to seven. But you may want to, so you could either have the entire committee work on both the CIP and the operating budget, or create those subcommittees again. And just want to put together some, if you want to create subcommittees, I want to put together some calendars for subcommittee dates going forward and so forth, like we did last year. I think we met on a weekly basis, each subcommittee. And because there's a lot of work involved going into a lot of documents to review. I've got like a 300-page document I'm going to be providing you this week on the capital plan regarding projects that have been submitted for funding requests. But it's up to your pleasure, Mr. Chairman, how you want to approach that this year.
I think the subcommittees have worked well in the past. When would you anticipate starting those subcommittee meetings? In January or like immediately?
Earlier, yeah, we need to start in December with the capital subcommittee. Capital comes first always.
Yeah.
And so the capital subcommittee would need to start right away, beginning in December. And then the operating budget subcommittee probably won't need to start until after the new year.
Okay. I think the subcommittees work well. I don't know what everyone else thinks. I think it's good if we can get a few members to focus just on one thing, capital or operating budget. I'm happy to be involved with both as the chair, but I'm open to what other members think.
I agree. I mean, I thought last year's approach was great. It allowed us to split up the tasks, and I'm a big fan of capital, so I'd be happy to work on that again this year if it's possible. But um, if it's possible, I'd also like to see if we could get invited to the capital improvement plan meetings from the.
Yes, that's on my staff communication list and later this evening, Jim. That meeting's coming up, and so if we could establish this evening, then the members of each subcommittee, that would be helpful.
I would love to be on Capital again. I had a good time with Jim last year, and I would love to work with Jim again.
Okay. Frank, what do you think? You're the new guy.
I'm interested in learning about both, but I definitely am interested in the operating side of it. So it's if I can only be on one, I would choose operating, but I'd still be interested in learning about what's going through the capital CIP program.
Okay. Chris, do you have a preference on either
I,
or?
yeah, I was operating last year, and that's where my expertise is. I'd like to stay there.
Okay.
And Frank, we get to see everything on the Capitol anyway, so
Yes, we'll be part of all of it no matter what.
we'll get to see it all.
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
Okay, so I mean, I think we'll do the subcommittees again. It sounds like Jeremy and Jim for sure on the Capitol. Like I said, I'll be part of both subcommittees. That's fine. Um, and then Lillian, I guess we'll have to see what she wants to do. I think she'll be open to either one, um, but yeah,
She
Jim.
was, I mean, Lillian was always on the operating, but you're right, is she might decide to try something different.
Yeah. I mean, right as it is with the members here, we have Jim and Jeremy for CIP, Chris King and Frank for operating budget. And like I said, I'll be on both of them as well. Um, so that's fine. We can see where Lillian wants to be and where our new member wants to be. Um, but we can certainly start there, Mark, if that works for you.
Okay. Yes, we meet again next week, so perhaps we can finalize the list for both next week.
Yeah, I mean, I can reach out to Lillian and find out and let you know. I was thinking for our regular meetings, since we're talking about it, we have 11:24, 12:08, and 12:22 on the schedule. I didn't know if we want to consolidate that to 12:01 and 12:15. I don't know if anyone's going away for Thanksgiving or Christmas or 11:24 and 12:22 could be problematic. I don't know what everyone's doing just for scheduling.
Would you mind saying that again, Chris? I just pulled up my
Yeah, that
calendar.
was a lot of dates there, but so right now on the schedule we have November 24th, December 8th, and December 22nd
Correct.
for the rest of the year. My thought was to change that from 3 meetings to 2 meetings, and they would be December 1st and December 15th. I don't know what anyone else's thoughts are. And then we can add subcommittee meetings, for CIP.
I think that makes sense.
Then we get on a regular, starting the first of the year, first and third Mondays. Would you go
Yeah,
back?
Actually, I have a calendar for 2026 meeting dates prepared. I'll send it out to the group. Sticking with the second and fourth Mondays of
Second
the
and
month,
fourth, I'm
which is
sorry.
what you've done. Yep. But if you want to change that to first and third, by all means, we can do whatever the committee's pleasure is.
I
I
think the
prefer,
second and fourth works out fine generally. So,
yeah.
but
Consolidating the meetings at the end of the year makes sense to me also.
Okay,
okay.
so Mr. Chairman,
I would defer to Mark because
yeah,
you're the one that's trying to drive a lot of stuff through us, right?
Yep. So I can, if you would, let me just make sure I have this clear. We'll cancel the 11/24, 12/8, and 12/22 meetings and replace those three with two new meetings on 12/1 and 12. Yeah, 12/1 and 12/15.
That's what I would like to do. I don't know. Is everyone else okay with that?
Works
That's
for
As long
fine.
as
me.
there's no conflicts. Yeah.
That's
Works for
good.
me.
All right. Sounds good. And then whatever you want to schedule for CIP meetings, just let me know, Mark.
Okay.
Okay. That's good. Um, Next item to discuss, review of the town's capacity to finance new capital projects.
Okay. Yes, I think that's me. I
That's
sent
you.
you all a capital trust fund cash flow analysis. Let me pull that up on my screen here and I'll walk through it with you. This is this trust fund is what we use to finance our general fund capital program. It's everything other than the enterprise funds, and with the exception of the HYCC, which um, we do provide some general fund support to because they don't have the revenue. They can't generate the revenue necessary to pay off all of the loans that we take to make improvements to that facility. Um, so this is what our next year, our 10-year projection of this particular funding source looks like. We have in FY26 a beginning trust fund balance on line one of $16.8 million. We provide an estimated investment earnings figure in there that goes directly into the fund. We've been contributing an additional $750,000 from new property tax growth to the capital program um, over a 5-year period. FY27 will be that last year that we do that. That's on line 3A. And we add that to the base transfer from the previous year, making sure that we consistently provide general fund or direct general fund dollars to the capital side of the budget, not just the operating side of the budget. It's a major consideration that we have to make taken or that we have to decide on how to allocate the resources every single year between our capital budget and our operating budget. And this is the tool that we use for the capital side of the budget. So in fiscal year 26, the total current year resources on line 4 is 17.5 million. And when you add that to the trust fund balance from the beginning of the year, 16.8 million, it gives us $34.4 million of total available resources before our commitments. Starting on line 6A, we subtract out our existing debt service payments for bonds that have already been issued that we're paying back. And line 6B, same thing, the enterprise fund, bonds that we've already issued that we're paying back with these resources in this fund. They total just over $9 million. And then we have the cash down on line 8 and 9 and 10 is the cash portion of our program. We commit a portion of our capital funding to cash funded projects as opposed to all loans. So we try to provide some capital funding in the form of cash as opposed to just as opposed to financing all of our capital improvements with loans. That provides us greater flexibility. And our total current year commitments on line 11, therefore, are just about $16.4 million. Leaving us a projected increase in this trust fund of $1.1 million for fiscal year 26, resulting in about an $18 million projected fund balance at the end of this fiscal year. So then starting in 27, we take that balance and we roll it forward. And then the important lines that we have to take consideration here is to analyze what our capacity is everything on line 7A through 7H. These are the estimated debt service payments and everything that's been authorized and unissued to date, and then what we could possibly fund going forward. So on line 7A, we have about $9.9 million of authorized loans that we haven't issued yet. But if we issue those in 2026, our debt service payments for 2027 are estimated to be about $1,165,000. And then we have another authorized and unissued debt amount for the FY26 CIP that was just approved a few months ago of $19 million. But we won't issue those loans this year. We'll probably issue them next year in FY27 as we commence the construction for those various capital projects. And so our first loan payment will come into play in fiscal year 28 on line 7B, and that's $1,858,000. And then for fiscal years 27 through 31, we're estimating that we could issue about $15 million of new bonds every year. And those debt service payments are reflected on those lines. And they would come into play 2 years after they're authorized. So for example, FY27, if we authorized $15 million in new borrowings, the first payments would be in FY29. FY28's $15 million, the first payments would be in FY30 and so forth. And eventually those authorized and unissued debt, as well as the estimated capacity that we could absorb on line 7H, they grow every single year to the point where they max out at about 9.15 million in fiscal year 2033. And if you go all the way down to line 12, you'll see what the net decrease in the fund balance is. We start drawing on that $18 million fund balance in fiscal year 28 because our commitments start to exceed the resources going into this fund. And the draw on that fund balance grows every single year until we get out to fiscal year 34. And at that point in time, our issued debt is going down. So we're starting to see some debt drop off exceeding our new debt issues, and the fund balance is starting to go back up. Or the fund balance isn't actually going up. It's still decreasing, but at a lesser rate. And so we have a target on our books that state that our commitments can exceed 80% of the available resources in this fund in any given year. And that's illustrated in line 14. And you can see that currently we're about at 48%. We estimate that to grow to 50%, and it's going to continue to grow until we get up to 77% in fiscal year 35. And so we're maxed out at that point in time. We've got 80% of our current year resources committed to loans in our cash capital program. And so that illustrates what our capacity is. We could do about $15 million in new loans for the next 5 years, but then we have to stop. We have to stop for a couple of years, let some of this debt expire before we can really ramp up a capital program again. And then our cash program is currently $7,325,000, and that's illustrated on line 10. That grows to $9.5 million by fiscal year 35 as we continue to try to provide more funding to our public roads maintenance program, which is a cash program, as well as the $5.75 million that's dedicated to the comprehensive wastewater management plan on an annual basis. And so, but we could average $15 million a year, but there could be some years where we don't issue that much. We just don't approve that much in funding. We don't have the projects ready to go. Maybe we do 10 million as opposed to 15 million. We could have years where we end up doing 20 million instead of 15. 15 is a target. It's not a number that we're dedicated to, but it gives us a sense as to where we can be around on an annual basis for the next 5 years. And so going into the development of the FY27 capital program, we're looking at, we'll see what the needs are. In addition to what our funding capacity is here, the other things we have to take into consideration is immediate public health and safety issues, projects that are that have offsetting grant opportunities associated with them, and we may want to take advantage of that grant opportunity and provide the local matching funds. The immediate potential failure of an asset, we have to take those types of things into consideration. And so it's not just, well, what can we afford? It's other things as well. But this provides us, this is kind of like the affordability model that we're working with going into the development of the capital program. So I think that's all I have to say about that. If there's any questions on this, happy to answer them now, or feel free to reach out to me one-on-one. Be happy to go through this.
Great, thank you, Mark. How does that line up with the CWMP plans over these fiscal years as far as the capital outlay?
Yeah, so in this trust, this is the general fund capital, and we've committed 5.75 million to the CWMP. We have a separate model that we've reviewed for funding that particular sub-program within our capital program. That's a big sub-program, right, inside our capital program. And so we run a separate funding model for that. And at that level of funding, we're done after FY27. We can't provide any more. We can't approve. I couldn't recommend that we go forward with financing any more CWMP projects until we identify another funding source, because we're capped out in that model, as we've seen, as we've reviewed previously, and with that current general fund commitment. So
the 15 million, the 15 million estimated for each fiscal year, that's outside of the CWMP commitment.
Correct. That's outside. This is our general fund capital program. So that's outside the CWMP is what we're talking about here.
Mark, what's the origin of that $15 million number? How did that?
That's what fits into the equation. That's our capacity. If we do about $15 million a year for the next 5 years, that's the maximum capacity that we can do, Jim.
That's the
with the current funding sources that we have. We'd have to dedicate more general fund resources to the capital side of the budget, take it away from the operating side of the budget if we wanted to be more aggressive in funding our capital program. And it could be the desire to direct the resources back to the operating side of the budget, right? There could be, we could have policy that changes that says to do that. Our operations need more funding, so cut back on the capital program and direct these resources back to the operating side of the budget. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What are the follow-up on that? What does it take for a line item to get put on that analysis? In other words, you have a separate line item for CWMP, which we all understand. Public road, the roads work has its own line item. You could debate whether or not that needs to be on there, but more specifically, my question is, what if we wanted to put a line item for schools, right? So we have major projects for schools that need to be looked at, and so
yeah, we could. We absolutely could. We could say, and this is policy. This is the fiscal policy type discussion that we need to have. And we could receive direction that, maybe that $15 million borrowing capacity gets directed to the schools and nothing else. Maybe we get more aggressive in our school capital program and we cut back on everything else. We convert that cash program for public roads into a borrowing capacity or debt payment. What could you buy for $3 million a year in form of a debt payment for some capital projects if you were to finance those over 20 years, for example? But you have to think about what the impact to the public road infrastructure would be if you did something like that. So there's a lot of different ways you could go with this. We've been trying to follow the policy guidance we've received, trying to fund the CWMP within Proposition 2.5 to date. This is what we've been able to do so far. But now our operating budgets are really feeling the impact of directing almost $6 million a year to the capital program for that particular sub capital program. And so, yeah, but you can have so many different iterations of this. It all depends on what your community's priorities are.
Mark, I might ask this question incorrectly, but with the debt services going out in the future years, how do you model the the interest rate? Is that something that gets modeled, or is it something that we need to concern ourselves with?
Yeah, it's a good point, Chris. It is something we have to be concerned with, and what we look at is trends in the borrowing costs, and we kind of we're a little conservative in what the interest rates in the interest rates that we do use. We always go a little bit higher than what we have historically um, been able to get out in the open market and our general obligation bonds. But certainly, we're starting to see. When I first came to the town of Barnstable 25 years ago, we were borrowing at around 4% for general obligation bonds. We saw that drop to about a low of 1.2% several years ago after the last economic recession. But we're approaching 4% again.
It's
Our,
creeping
our,
up.
last,
Yeah.
our last bond issue was like 3.6%. And so we're starting to get up there. And so when we go out, we're assuming they're going to continue to stay at that level, maybe a little bit higher. But with talks of the Fed's cutting interest rates, oftentimes that will impact our borrowing costs as well. And so maybe we'll start seeing a more leveling off or a slight decline in interest rates going out. But we use a factor a little bit higher than what we received typically in our last borrowing that we conducted, and we use that as a guide.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments on that? Jeremy, Frank?
Yeah, Mark, just one question around kind of logistics then for departments. So if I am considering that in 5 years, I won't have the opportunity to apply for a capital project, I guess, is that communicated to departments now? Is that something that they consider? And I guess how does it affect the next 5 years? But how long do you think that pause lasts? If kind of following this without other redirections, how long would it take to get to a point where kind of a 15 million could resume?
Yeah, so we provide this cash flow analysis every year in our comprehensive capital improvement plan document. We review it with the task force every year. So we provide this tool to CFAC every year. And so department heads are aware of what our estimated capacity is as they're preparing their submissions. But their submissions are really more based on a need. We don't want them because we've had some pushback from the department heads to say, you can only fund $15 million a year. Why are you making us do all these submissions for projects? And our response is that we need to know what the need is. What if we have 25, $30 million of assets that have the imminent potential to fail or are a serious public health or safety issue? We have to figure out something different then because we can't ignore those. And so we ask them to every year identify what those needs are so we know what our quote unquote unfunded liability is. And so, yeah, they're well aware of it. And this projection that I showed you, I only gave you 10 years. It goes out 40. And so we can see what years we can start going back or start adding more projects back to the model.
So it's a cyclical pattern. I just wondered, instead of going to zero, is there a way to have a buffer there? Because there's undoubtedly going to be projects where it's like, hey, this just came up and we need. So I just wonder if even if we spent less than 15, it would allow for at least a cushion instead of just a full on end.
Yeah, so on that we do, it's a great point, which is why we cap it at 80%, so that we have 20% set aside in the event that there something does come up and we're tapped out. The other cushion that we use is our general fund reserves, and those are available for capital financing as well. So a couple of tools that we have that we utilize in the event that we find ourselves in that position someday where we can't do anything else and we got to go to our reserves.
Gotcha.
Mark, it's Frank. I love the one-page format. I think it's tremendous. I do have if I could ask, because I print things and then I go back and try to look at them. And then when I print this thing, I can't tell who created it or what the date is of it. And maybe it's just the way I printed it. It doesn't show up. But if there was a way to say it was prepared by XYZ and has an as of date, so that if I go back to it a month from now and say, I know who to call. Is that possible?
Yes. Yep. We can add that as a header or a footer to the document.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Next is preliminary fiscal 27 general fund budget projection. If you want to get into that, Mark.
Sure. Thank you. So that was the other document that I emailed out to the committee members last week. Let me share my screen here and we'll go over that real quickly. So this is our preliminary FY27 general fund budget projection. This is going to get modified several times throughout the budget development process as more information becomes available to us. But we start off, go up to the very beginning here. We start off with our property tax levy. So under Proposition 2.5, we can increase that base levy by 2.5% every year. And so the allowable increase for fiscal year 27 is $3,847,000. And then we can add a factor for new property growth. We're estimating that at about $1.3 million right now. And then we have two exclusions that can be added to the levy every year. One is for the Cape Cod Commission's assessment, our share of that assessment, as well as our share of the debt exclusion for the Cape Cod Regional Technical High School. And then we set aside a portion of the property tax levy every year in what's called an overlay reserve account. And that pays for abatements and exemptions that some property owners are eligible for. And so that's going down from about 1.3 million to 1.2 million. And so the difference in total property taxes available for the operating budget is 160.1 million versus 154.9 million, or about a $5.2 million increase overall for the operations budget. And then we have our other taxes category, which is predominantly motor vehicle excise. We're estimating an increase of $900,000 there. You can see our FY25 actual collections. We're about 12.8 million, but we're using a little more conservative estimate for FY27 of 12.1 million. And we'll see how that trends over this fiscal year. We'll probably have to adjust that depending upon what happens in the month of January, which is when we get our large motor vehicle excise tax commitment from the Registry of Motor Vehicles. The state produces the bill amounts for this particular tax, and that commitment usually tells us what direction this revenue source is going in. And it can be a volatile revenue source. If people don't continuously replace older vehicles with newer vehicles, we could actually see a decline in this revenue source. And we did during that last recession, where we lost almost $1.5 million in this revenue source in the course of 1 year, and you can see it's a major revenue source for us. It's our second largest revenue source after property taxes and state aid. And with the cost of vehicles continuously going up, it gets more difficult perhaps for people to replace that vehicle, but it also creates the potential for more revenue because it's based on the manufacturer's suggested retail price of the vehicle. But it gets quickly depreciated. And so the tax bill goes down on that particular vehicle over a 5-year period at an accelerated rate. Enough on motor vehicle excise taxes, but state aid is our next second largest category, and most of that is Chapter 78. And we're estimating about a $900,000 increase in Chapter 78 right now. A little optimistic, perhaps. We're hoping that we can get at least $100 per student as minimum aid or more. And we'll see what happens out of the budget process. You see, it went up about $700,000 from FY25 to FY26, but we're projecting a little bit more than that in growth. Downside in here is charter tuition reimbursements. The state has a formula reimbursing communities for the cost of sending students to charter schools, Commonwealth charter schools, and the way that formula is based, it reduces the amount that a community receives over a multiple year period, eventually migrating all that cost onto the local tax base and with no state support. So there's a reduction there. So overall, state aid, a 1.4% increase of $443,000. And we have dozens of lines for charges of services. I didn't do all the detail here because the document would be so much longer, but charges for services, a lot of this is recreation. Most of it are beach permit parking stickers, or parking revenue generated at the beaches. We're estimating about a 5.2% increase, bringing it to $2,577,000, which is about $100,000 less than what we actually took in fiscal year 25. So we're confident we can continue to grow that estimate upwards based on current activity levels. And that revenue source is based on activity level. Fees, we're estimating about level funded for fees. There's not a lot of room for growth here based on what we actually took in FY25. So we're keeping that pretty consistent, half a percentage point increase. Fines and penalties we're only projecting about a 3.8% increase. A lot of this revenue category gets generated from the late interest and penalties on the late payment of taxes. We had a very strong year in fiscal year 25 in collecting a lot of back taxes that were owed to the town, which is why we saw a significant increase in our general fund reserves, even though we used a lot of general fund reserves to balance the FY26 operating and capital budgets. Those general fund reserves grew still. And a lot of it was because of the collection of those back taxes owed. So we're not confident that we can raise this revenue category significantly more than what we have here, even though we took in $2.6 million in fiscal year 25, because as those taxes get collected, your ability to generate revenue in this category goes down because there's just less outstanding taxes out there. Licenses are pretty much level funded, and most of that is alcohol beverage licenses that we issue on an annual basis. Other revenue is predominantly investment income and renewable energy revenue from the solar panels that we have. And we're projecting about a 6.5% increase there. Most of the growth there is in investment income. We've been very conservative in our investment income projections. However, based in the past couple of years and what our projection for interest rates are, we feel confident that we can grow this revenue category without subjecting ourselves to a revenue deficit. One thing that could impact this estimate is if the federal government decided to drastically reduce interest rates in a short period of time, that could impact us in a negative way. And then our permits, multiple permits issued in different departments, most of it building permits, wiring permits, electrical permits, about a 3% increase there. again, based on what we took in last year predominantly, leaving a little bit of a cushion for the event of a drop in activity. Special assessments is mostly made up of an assessment that commercial property taxpayers will receive on their tax bills if they don't return their income and expense forms to our assessing department. And so if they don't do that, they get assessed at a $250 assessment onto their tax, gets added to their tax bill for the failure to file that form with us. That's most of that category. It's not a big revenue generator for the town of Barnstable, but that's what it is. Now we have multiple transfers here. Level funding transfers from these special revenue accounts that we have for waterways, embarkation fees, wetland protection funds, parking receipts, an increase in the charge to the enterprise fund operations for the general fund support that they receive of 2.5%. And then free cash used to balance the budget remaining the same at $8.4 million. With what we used in FY26, we're starting off in FY27, but our goal is to work on reducing that. But this is our starting point. And so that gives us a grand total of $7.3 million growth in revenue, which is about 3.2%. Then we move into our expenditure side of the budget, and we start off with our school assessments. We have three predominantly that make up this category. Regional school district assessment received from Cape Cod Tech, our Commonwealth charter schools for Barnstable students that attend Commonwealth charter schools, and students that participate in the school choice program, inter-community school choice program. Right now, with 3.5% projected increase. The enrollments, this is all based on October 1st enrollments. The state will be sharing that data with us in the near future. And come January, we'll receive our preliminary estimates as to what these numbers will be from the state of Massachusetts. The regional school district, however, that applies, by the way, to just school choice and Commonwealth charter school assessments. The regional school district will send us an assessment based on our enrollment out at Cape Cod Tech. And we are about the same, our student population is about the same percentage as it was in the previous year. So we estimate that our assessment for their operating budget will go up at a similar percentage to what their operating budget will go up. And right now, it could be about 3.5%. But we'll receive that in January from the Cape Cod Technical Regional High School. And then we get into employee benefits. This is the big one. This is where a predominance of our other requirements are in this particular category, the big ones being health insurance and pension assessments. Out of the $37 million estimated expenditure here, the pension assessments, $14.4 million of that. $12.4 million for active employee health insurance, $4.5 million for retired teachers. That comes from the state. $2 million for retired municipal employees, and so about a 5% increase overall. The bad news here is that we're starting to hear whispers out there that premium rate increases are going to be much higher than this. Again, this is a preliminary projection. Cape Cod Municipal Health Group is working on their premium rate adjustments right now based on their actual expenditure history. And we're starting to hear sounds of double-digit percentage increases in health insurance rates. And so this number is going to get adjusted come January, late January. They'll have a member meeting, and then in February, their steering committee will vote on what the rate increases are. And so we'll have a better sense in the near future as to what these are going to be. But I think they're going to be quite a bit higher than what you see here. Other fixed costs, we have debt service, in our capital trust fund contribution. Those two numbers, the 8.2 million and the 9.7 million, is that base contribution to the capital trust fund that you saw in that other worksheet. and that's growing by 750,000. That's our commitment to funding the capital program. And then we have our property and casualty liability insurance. This is another cost that's going up significantly over the past few years. We're going to be before the town council again Thursday night with a supplemental budget request because the premiums that came in for fiscal year 26 higher than what we had estimated. And it's based on a lot of different reasons. And so $200,000 right now, but that could be more. We provide funding to the 7 village libraries. We set that at 2% for now, but based on everything else that's going on, we may have to think hard about even increasing that $1 or perhaps scaling it back a little bit. But we provide funding for the 7 village libraries in the form of a grant. They're independent organizations, not part of town government, but it has been done since their existence. And then we have a few other line items in that category. And then we get to our state and county assessments. These are all assessments that we receive from these various agencies. We estimate about on average, a 2.5% increase across the board in those, and it's been pretty consistent.
Mark, it's Councilor Ludke. Can you
Yes.
just go back, because we had a presentation on this, a very detailed presentation. Celebrations.
Yes.
You've moved that down quite a bit, yet the presentation seemed to imply that the celebrations were becoming even more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And it was left open-ended as to what we were doing. So what explains your budgeting there?
Yeah, so this line item for celebrations here is really what this is our 4th of July. This covers that event between, the fireworks display, the parades, the police overtime, DPW overtime, and then a little bit of money for Unity Day. We provide a budget of about $17,000 for Unity Day. So those two events, 4th of July, Unity Day, and then some more localized village association celebrations within the various 7 villages. And so that's really what the 185 is providing. What was presented to the council included all the other costs that are absorbed by the operating budgets within the public works department, within the police department, and so forth. So this is just costs that we fund outside of their operating budgets, which is less than what we're actually spending.
Okay. Although I will add, this year we didn't have the 4th of July either on the 4th of July or in September.
Yes.
So what happened to that money?
So that money's sitting right now in the budget unspent. And we're working on a plan. I believe planning and development is working on a plan to start putting together a celebration for our 250th anniversary, or the country's 250th anniversary, which happens, I believe, next July 4th. And so they are going to utilize the funding for that celebration. So, but contracts need to be put into place this fiscal year, but they won't happen towards the end of the fiscal year. And they'll use this money for that.
Okay, thank you. I think there's just a lot more to get into on these celebrations. That's the sense I got from that presentation, that there's a lot more discussion to be had. And you've explained this part, and then there's additional costs. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And then, so in state and county assessments, these are all from other organizations that send us assessments. We're part of a regional veterans district. Their offices are here in Barnstable in the village of Hyannis. They serve multiple communities, and this covers the direct benefits that we're required to pay to veterans, as well as our share of their administrative budget, which they send out in the form of an assessment. So this covers direct benefit payments and the Veterans District assessment. And then we have some smaller ones here there for the Old Kings Highway and Greenhead Fly Control District. Mosquito control comes through a state assessment. This is the run mosquito control projects. Public health and safety issue, trying to keep down the mosquito population and the diseases that they spread. And then a few these are all state assessments: air pollution, RMV, non-renewal surcharge, Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority comes through the cherry sheet, which is part of the state assessment, and the county tax and the Cape Cod Commission assessment, all part of our cherry sheet that we receive, listing all of these state assessments. And so all of these costs are going up almost $3 million. And we take that away from the $7 million in increased revenue. It leaves us with about $4.3 million of available revenue for growth in the operating budgets, and that gets split 60-40 between the municipal and school operations. 60% to school budget, 40% to the municipal budget. And so that's the projected revenue growth and how it gets allocated: 1.7 million for municipal budgets and $2.6 million for school budgets. I'll go back to my comment about the free cash or reserves. That's before reducing any amount from reserves. And so, the school department, for example, wanted to continue to use $3.4 million to balance their operating budget, then their projected budget would be $96.2 million. However, if they wanted to start weaning themselves off that reserve, they're going to have to come up with a smaller budget than that. But these are the dollar figures, assuming that we use the same level of funding from our reserves. These are the budget targets that we're trying to achieve for the municipal operations and the school operations. Municipal is about 55.5 million, and school would be 96.2 million. Going to be less if we decide to start using less of our reserves.
Mark, does that 96 million in school have employee benefits and pension costs in it?
No, that's all up here under employee benefits right here. It's all school employees are covered here. And
so that
for
teachers, it's borne by the operating budget when you do the
by the operating budget.
Operating absorbs it.
Yeah, it's under the other requirements section of the budget right here, part of this 37 million. Here's the pension assessment, and here's the health insurance for active employees. That includes employees of all departments with the exception of enterprise funds. Enterprise fund employees pay their own health insurance, and we assess them for their share of the pension assessment. But it includes school, police, DPW, administrative services, inspectional services, and so forth. Teachers. Most of our employees in the school department belong to the Mass Teachers Retirement System. And so their pension is covered by their cost of their pension is covered by the state of Massachusetts. Communities don't have to contribute to the MTRS. The only school employees who are included in this number here, 14.4 million, are school employees who aren't part of the Mass Teachers Retirement System. And that would include your facility and grounds employees, your custodial employees, as well as some other employees, but a couple hundred employees in total. But most of the school employees are part of that Mass Teachers Retirement System, which we don't have to pay anything towards.
That leads me towards my question. When we started to do the last summary, the belief was that it was too difficult to overlay employee benefits back to departments. But my hope was that for the upcoming fiscal year, we might be able to do something like that with a percentage, so the true cost could be seen.
Sure, and we do that on an annual basis, and I guess I just never you weren't directed to that, but if you go into the operating budget summary, there was a
page on this of the 600. There was one page that we were referred to, but I'm a big fan of trying to understand what. For the most part, the town of Barnstable is primarily people. All the cost is people. And then we take 37 million out of it and we put it on one line called fixed costs. If it's on one page, I'd be in favor of seeing it in budget presentations of an operating basis. What does it really cost for an employee? So if someone wants to make up a name, someone wants to create a mosquito catcher and add that person, and they say the salary is only $60,000, but it's really costing another 20 for employee benefits and another 5 for future pension. That's the conversation that I'd like people to have, so that they understand whenever they add a person, there's far more than just the salary that I often hear or I've seen in the past people discuss.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a good point because, what if they decide, if you had that position, what if that position decides to participate in our health insurance plan? We don't
Exactly.
know. We don't know, but if they will, but what is the cost of that health insurance going to be? Is it a family plan? Is it a single plan? Do they not participate? So it's an unknown cost, but you do need to plan for it in the event that they do come in and
Correct.
join the workforce and they take a family plan, the most expensive family plan that we offer, perhaps. Um, but the
It leads to
pension,
the
the direct,
question, should it be outsourced? In some cases, things could be outsourced and it would be far cheaper. Just something to consider. I'm not certain it's
outsource
often
what?
considered.
What do you want to outsource?
Uh, I have nothing in particular, but my point is if someone says they want a mosquito control person or
Okay.
whatever, and they say, I can get them for $50,000 of salary, and you could
Yeah.
outsource it for 70. Well, it would still be cheaper to outsource it for 70 because the all-in cost is 80. You see my point?
Yeah, we've actually did that with the management of our water enterprise fund operation. The entire water system workforce is an outsourced contract with Viola Water Company. We only have, I think, 2.5 employees that are on our payroll for that water system, that water enterprise fund, and we pay about over $3 million a year in a management contract, and those are the people who provide all the direct services for our water system. So that's an example of one of the areas that we have completely outsourced.
Thank you.
But there could be others.
No, I'm also in favor of trend analysis. I know that you show in this case 25, 26, 27. 25 is real, 26 is theoretical, and 27 is theoretical. If you're consistent with the way your spreadsheets are built, I would bet you have 23 and 24 in there. And then, like for instance,
Yeah,
when you show numbers
I got
like
2012 and 2013
oh,
and 24. I didn't want to give you all that because of the size of the paper,
I
but
agree with that, but
you want to see it?
I'd like
I'll
to
give it to you.
suggest, well, like for instance, when you say permits were 2.7 million in 25, if you showed the 2 years prior to that and they happen to be 3 million and 3.2 million, it would kind of blow up your analysis. But if it showed 2.6, 2.6, 2.7, it cements the versus me having to ask the question, which I'm going to be asking. So, in a way the way to accomplish having those two more columns is another suggestion that I'm really hoping we could do is start, instead of in whole dollars, go to thousands. It would take 25% of the digits off the page. And I think most of the people reviewing it could quickly become accustomed with things in thousands. It's much easier to analyze. Just my recommendation, but I'm not certain everybody will agree with me. Because a lot can be seen on one page. If you're in thousands and you have a 5-year trend, you can quickly analyze whether or not, for instance, the celebrations, you'd see if it was, that question came up, Betty would have been able to see it was 205, 210, 250 down to 185 instead of wondering what we spent in the past. So hopefully that type of analysis things can be presented with 5 years of information in dollars and thousands. And I think it would help a lot of people that want to look at it to answer the questions before they have to ask them. Just my thoughts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we appreciate that, Mark. Any other comments or questions?
Not on that, but I do have a few other things under staff communications.
Okay.
You want to
No
jump to
other
that?
questions from committee members on that? We all set?
Thank you.
All right. Any correspondence on anything else from committee members? Anything at all? Okay. Well, we'll go to whatever you have left, Mark.
So we do have our CIP task force meeting coming up on Tuesday, December 2nd. And it is going to be held in the JFK Museum here on Main Street in the Scudder Family Center for Civic Engagement on the second floor of that facility. We will start the task force meeting at 9 a.m. And I'd like to invite anybody from CFAC who would like to come and attend that meeting as an observer, like we have done in the past. And I think typically it's been members of the CIP subcommittee or one member from that committee, maybe one from the operating budget committee. But I just want to put that out there as an offer. I think some of you may have attended that in the past, but I just want to give you a heads up. That's coming up, and if you would like to attend, please send me, or maybe we can decide now, and I can include you on the invite. Lunch will be provided. It's an all-day meeting. It's going to go from like 9 to 3, I think, at 3:30. So we will be providing lunch for everybody because it's really a working lunch day.
What's on the menu?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I don't make the menu, but probably soup and sandwiches.
Is that in the celebrations budget, Mark?
No. That comes out of my budget, actually, I think. I don't
Oh,
know. I can't remember who paid for it, but it's probably me.
Mark, I'd
It's
like
not.
to attend.
You'd like to attend,
you're going
Jim?
to attend? Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I certainly enjoyed attending last year. I got back to school the next day. I was like, listen, students, I just learned a lot. So if anyone else wants to go, I'd certainly be open to it, but I would be happy to do it again.
I would like to go. I'll have to let you know, Mark, if I
Okay.
can get the day off.
Yeah.
Mark, is it recorded so people can see it after the fact?
It's not a recorded meeting. No. At this meeting, the departments will present their highest priority projects, and it gives the rest of the task force members the opportunity to ask questions. It's really the meetings for the benefit of the task force, which is made up of department heads and other key members of each department staff who have to go through and do a rating of each project using a evaluation tool that we've developed that rates each project based on 10 different criteria. And so it's really the benefit for the task force to give them enough information, opportunity to ask questions so they can so they have a good sense as to what the project involves, and so that they can go through and rank those projects. We ultimately use that scoring matrix to rank the projects in terms of, well, here's how they scored with these priorities, but other considerations come into play, of course, before the town manager makes his decision as to which projects to bring forward. So, but oftentimes what you see end up happening is the highest priority ranked projects typically come forward for funding recommendations.
Great. So anyone else who wants to attend, please just let Mark know. We'll go from there.
Yeah, I just want to make points. It's not a public meeting. It's town staff working together in a meeting, but we've always invited a couple of members from this committee to attend, because I think it helps you in your development of your report to see what we actually do, how we make the sausage.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Anything else you have for us?
I'll be sending out soon the draft CIP document, which includes all the projects that have requested FY27 funding. There's 90 of them, I believe, totaling way more than $15 million. Which is why we go through this process to try to identify the most important ones. So I'll be sending that out to the committee members this week. So you'll have that in advance. At least those of you who would like to attend the task force meeting, you'll have in advance what the task force members will have. And also I'll send out this week a calendar for 2026 that we can talk about at the next meeting and adopt if everything seems okay with that.
Excellent. And
And just a warning, you'll be getting a lot of calendar invites once we establish that calendar, because I like to set up the meetings in advance and send you all an invitation for those. So you'll get a lot of emails from me. I apologize in advance.
all good. So the CIP subcommittee meetings, what are you thinking for those for December?
What works for people on that subcommittee as far as timing? Because I know, like, for example, Jeremy, you're working, and is a day meeting or an evening meeting work for you better? So I'll leave it to the committee to send me what your preference would be for the day of the week and the time of the day. But last year, I believe we met almost on a weekly basis.
We did, yeah. And you needed every one of them, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you, evenings are better for me always.
Okay.
And yeah, so we'll figure that out.
Yeah. I
Um,
think last year we did same time, 6 o'clock, but maybe on a Wednesday evening or something like that. I think it
okay.
was Wednesdays.
Yeah, that's fine. Is there any particular day of the week that works for you guys, Jim, Jeremy? Does it matter?
Wednesdays are not great, but Mondays and Tuesdays are definitely the better days for me.
Yeah, Mondays will conflict with our full committee meeting occasionally, so maybe
How about we
Tuesdays.
pick for CIP, pick Tuesday at
Yeah,
6?
sounds
How's
good
it
to me.
sound?
Yeah, we can do that. So you want to start what, like the 9th maybe, Mark, or
Tuesday the
of
9th.
December?
Okay. Yes, we'll do
Does
that.
that
Let's do
work?
12/9. Yep.
Okay. Alrighty.
And I'll send that invite off to every committee member for those subcommittee meetings as well. Um, Optional for you to attend, but certainly you're welcome to attend all subcommittee meetings. But if we establish an official subcommittee like we have in the past, the report will come from that subcommittee. That's all. That's the only difference. But you're more than welcome to attend all these subcommittee meetings.
Sounds good. All
And
right.
just note that quorum rules apply to subcommittees as well. So if we have 3-person subcommittee, we're going to need at least two people from that subcommittee to attend to meet quorum.
Okay. And if we have a 4-person committee, it's also 2, or you need 3 for a
It's
quorum.
If you have a 4-person subcommittee.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I believe you'll need 3 then. Yeah, because I don't think 50% accounts as a quorum.
Okay. Is it better? I mean, I'm happy to participate in both, but is it better if I'm not an actual subcommittee member? If we keep it at 3 people per committee, or
Yeah, I think it works better that way because then your requirement for quorum is less, and so we
okay.
can continue to meet and conduct business.
Okay, so I won't be an actual member of either subcommittee then, but I will try to attend all the meetings. So
Okay.
I'll just find out from Lillian which one she wants to be on, and then our new member will get the other one, I guess. So I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Excellent. All right. So our next meeting will be December 1st. And that's it. Anything else from anyone? No? I would
Nice
entertain
work, you guys.
oh,
Thank you.
thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Night, Chris.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Make a motion to
Oop,
adjourn.
It's been moved and seconded, I think.
second.
Yes. All right. Can we get a roll call, Jeremy?
Chris King,
Off mute now, yes.
Chris Lazan,
Yes.
Jim Sproul,
Yes.
Frank Ward,
Yes.
And I am a yes.
Excellent. All right. Thank you,